played. Joining me now is Congressman Adam Kinzinger, Republican representative of Illinois. Congressman, I want to talk to you about what's going on in Gaza. But first, I want your take on the latest out of North Korea. What should we make of this? Is it a head fake, or was North Korea always sort of going to build this up to get us excited and then walk away? What do you think is going on?
I think it's a head fake for now. I mean, it's always tough to tell with North Korea, but there was no surprise, as you alluded to, on the joint military exercises. We made it clear we're not going to stop them, and Kim Jong-un still came across the border and did a smiley dance and everything. And so this is, I think, his attempt to try to gain some leverage back into the negotiations. But I think he needs to understand. I know he's an avid viewer of Unfiltered, so I'm going to tell him.
Thank you.
This is a moment where you either have to decide you're either going to do diplomacy, or I think war is way more likely. So I'm not overly concerned yet. I think this is exactly what we'd expect.
Well, how do you think Trump should respond next?
I think I would say almost a nonchalant response, kind of like he did, which is like, look, we haven't heard anything. We're going to go ahead, and if he doesn't want to come to the table, we'll see what happens. And that we'll see what happens is we'll go back to we were high pressure, potential for military action, and I think this does Kim Jong-un. It would serve him well to actually follow through with this meeting. And look, if you want to survive, complete denuclearization of North Korea.
Right. Okay, let's talk about Gaza and Hamas. We've seen coverage of the violence on the border the past few days, but this follows weeks of protests. 60 Palestinians were killed by IDF. Hamas admits 50 of these were Hamas fighters. I have been struck by how ineffectively and irresponsibly many in the media have been covering this story, trying to equate moving the embassy and opening the embassy to what has been weeks of violence on the Gaza border. What have you made of the coverage?
It's unreal. I was on a certain news show where the first question after, the launch of 20 missiles from Iran into Israel, the first question is this because President Trump withdrew from the nuclear deal? And I said, well, yeah, it is. If about 2 days ago, Hezbollah created 150,000 rockets and Iran for the first time moved into Syria. But this has been going on for a long time. And it's always mysterious to me why we're so eager to criticize Israel for doing, frankly, exactly what we would do if this was happening on one of our borders, defending ourselves. And by the way, this isn't all women and children. It's always sad when anybody dies. But as you mentioned, these are terroristic fighters that are really trying to stir up problems with Israel.
Well, and even if you believe, as I do, and I know you do, that Israel has every right to defend itself against terrorists, the Palestinian people deserve better than their Hamas representation. For example, there are reports that Hamas is turning away truckloads of IDF humanitarian aid. Why don't Western audiences see through the Hamas propaganda instead of playing right into it?
And again, it's something I don't understand. There's an element to this blame Israel first policy that I just don't get. If Israel does something wrong, I'm going to be the first to criticize them as I would anybody. But in this case, when they try to send aid to the innocent Palestinians, people, and Hamas is using aid as a weapon, and they're using the innocent Palestinian people as a propaganda weapon. They want them to be tear gassed. They want them to be pushed away from the border, because then they can find that tragic scene and say, look at what this terrible Israel has done to us. All Israel wants to do is to exist. That's it. And if the Palestinians accepted Israel's right to exist, it may be a lot easier.
Yeah, and when it comes to the UN, I mean, we're talking about Western audiences, which generally, as you say, are skeptical, to put it politely, of Israel. But the UN is downright hostile to Israel, and we saw that sort of maxed out this week. What position does that put the United States in? Someone like Nikki Haley at the UN, who, Israel is a major ally, and we can't rely on other UN actors to call out what we all know is reality over there.
Well, Nikki Haley's tough as nails, as we all know, and for her to stand there and say and call out the double standards for what they are is wise. I mean, think about this. Just recently there were dictators like Syria or Bolivia or whatever that were calling out the Israeli government on things. And this is really the freest government in the Middle East. This is where people can live together, Christians, Jews, Muslims, in peace, as long as everybody wants to live in peace. And yet it's the ire of the UN. Again, I don't understand the underlying cause of all this, but thank you for calling it out, because people need to see that if Israel does something wrong, we'll call it out. But defending your borders against terrorists is not anything wrong.
Yes, and this equivalence between Israel and Hamas is completely irresponsible. All right, Congressman Kinzinger, thanks so much for joining me.